You one day in a little toy shop, buy a bag of balloons with the money we got, set them free at the break of dawn, till one by one they were gone. Back at base, bugs in the software flash the message, something's out there, floating in the summer sky. 99 red balloons go by. 99 red balloons floating in the summer sky. It's panic bells, it's red alert. There's something here from somewhere else. The war machine springs to life, opens up one eager eye, focusing it on the sky where 99 red balloons go by. 99 Decision Street, where 99 ministers meet to worry, super scurry, call the troops out in a hurry. This is what we've waited for, this is it boys, this is war. The president is on the line as 99 red balloons go by. Nights of the year, right? Super high-tech jet fighters. Everyone's a superhero. Everyone's a Captain Kirk, with orders to identify, to clarify and classify. Scramble in the summer sky as 99 red balloons go by. As 99 red balloons go by. 99 dreams I have had, in every one a red balloon. It's all over and I'm standing pretty in this dust that was a city. If I could find a souvenir just to prove the world was here, and here is a red balloon, I cry for peace and let it go.
If only there were 100 of us remained alive, never would we, under any circumstances, be brought under anybody's idea of a new world order. It is, in truth, not for honor, nor for glory, nor for riches that we are fighting, but for freedom. For that one thing alone which no honest person would give up save with life itself. Once we were warrior poets. For now, we must stand for peace. But if you hear my voice, you are the resistance. And our time is coming. Alex, Glenn, how are you? How are you, Alex?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
And Glenn, how are you?
Yeah, similarly, yeah, not too bad considering. So I'm very glad to be here today.
Well,
so
yes,
always enjoy Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday's my favourite show, I must admit. And And indeed, it's going to be a fun one this week, because I have no idea what you two guys are going to throw at me. But that's good. We like to do this every now and then. Um, so, in the future, if there's a future, and that's got a great big capital I and a great big capital fucking F, if there's a future. This will be known, I've said this before, but this will certainly be known as the age of gross stupidity. The Dark Ages were called the Dark Ages because people had forgotten, because of the wars and the downfall of the Roman Empire and the downfall of civilization, people had forgotten how to do a lot of things. It took 500 years or more until we got back to where we'd been, almost 1,000 years back. Well, we're sitting at that same point, people. And if there's a future, and that's a big if, this will be known as the age of fucking gross stupidity. We are led by lunatics and morons, and we're letting them fucking do it. So it's our fault. Everything that I'm going to talk about now is our fault. We have escalations in the Middle East. We have escalations in the Russia-Ukrainian war. We have climatic chaos happening. We have a famine that is just round the corner. And I almost don't know where to fucking begin, if I'm being serious. And, you know, we do like to keep things sometimes light. And, you know, the meme going around, remember when Sarah Connor was put in a mental hospital for attacking data centers? You know, well, maybe we should have fucking taken a bit more heed to some of this stuff. We are gearing up, I believe, for potentially the last great naval battle of all time. Why do I say that? Well, we have blockades everywhere. We have civilian shipping. Just less than an hour ago, a tanker hit an Iranian mine in the Gulf of Hormuz, in the Straits of Hormuz, sorry, and was blown up because it deviated from the Iranian scheduled route. We have Ukraine attacking Iranian ships. We have the lunatics in Brussels. For all of those that think fucking Britain being back in the EU will be a good thing, we have the lunatics in fucking Brussels have now imposed their 21st sanctions package on Russia. And that's all predicated on keeping a price cap on Russian oil of $44 a barrel. Are they living in fucking cuckoo land or what? They are morons. Absolute fucking morons. Right now, Brent crude is $100 plus, and that's going to rise. We have Britain allowing our air bases in Cyprus to be used to attack Iran, and Iran knows it. It's only a matter of time before Iran takes action. And for those of you out there who are geographically challenged, Iranian missiles can easily hit Kiev. Iranian missiles can easily hit the British bases in Cyprus. We have this mysterious explosion in Essex that was a fertilizer plant, not a drone plant. It wasn't the fucking Russians. It might have been our own fucking lunatics. Russia is pounding Ukraine into dog shit. The port of Odessa is blockaded. No ships to Odessa. So the supply of arms to Ukraine has dwindled to a trickle, probably 12% of what they previously were getting. Their ability to export grain is gone. And if Russia starts hitting the barges, which it may well, on the Dnipro, that will go down to almost fucking zero. But the lunatics in the EU, Kaja Kallas, thinks that they can impose a $44 price cap on Russian fucking oil. Not only that, she has said that EU ships, NATO ships, should now start to attack and board and seize Russian tankers operating in the Indian Ocean. And the lunatics in Brussels have also agreed that they can now, when they seize these tankers, they can sell the oil that's on them. If they attempt to do that, you will see Russian submarines and Russian frigates blowing any fucking ship, Coast Guard or naval ship attempting to seize a Russian tanker. They will be sunk. And whilst Russia has not yet attacked a NATO country, the very fact that we are now hitting Russian civilian warehouses for no good fucking reason is enraging the Russian population. And Putin is the little boy now in the dike with his fingers holding back a flood, because most of Russia wants the Russian military to send a clear message to the lunatics in Brussels, in Berlin, in Paris, and in fucking Londinium or Manchester, number 10 up north, and the fucking arsehole Burnham. I'm done with all of them. We live in an age of stupidity governed by morons and lunatics who are going to burn this world to the fucking ground. I'm quite angry today about it all. I didn't realise I was, but I am. What say you, Glenn?
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with a single word of that, because we are indeed, we are, not only are we led by donkeys, but I believe we're led by blind donkeys with no sense of direction. And the only direction they seem to want to go is to push us into war with Russia. Now, the word on the wire is that Trump is about to launch a huge attack on Iran, by air, possibly by land. So once again, we see that it ramping up the war talk, and actually going to ramp up the war. And these lunatics in Europe, across Europe, virtually without exception, seem to relish the fact that we're going to go to war with Russia. They are trying to take us to war with Russia. And that may very well be, as you say, what the Russian people have finally come to. They have come to the point, well, if they want war, let's give them war. Let's give them hell. So we are in a very, very vulnerable position. Those air bases are in vulnerable positions, and now you've got this ridiculous stupidity, of America and Israel fusing militarily together, meaning we're probably going to see American air bases being built in Israel. So yeah, it's just stupidity. But there you go.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I almost want to say make it make sense, Alex, but I don't think anyone can make it make sense at this point. Um, except to say that I do think it's all very deliberate. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, it has to be an intent, because the propaganda machine is through the roof this last week, not just Israel, but the whole anti-Russian thing is back again. So that I spent the entire week commenting on news things. Is whatever they're saying at the time, is the agent here in the room with us? Is this thing here in the room with us? Because it's all completely manufactured. But when they start pushing that level of propaganda, when they start, even I see even a nefarious intent in this whole, everybody should have to pay the TV license, everybody should have to, it should be on your council tax, or it should be, if you're paying for a streaming service. There seems to be a distinct intent to control what everybody hears, what everybody knows. And when they go that hard in with the propaganda, it's because they want everybody to believe one thing. And we had, earlier in the week, we had the Express, Russia plans to, next 3 countries Russia intend to attack. Then the day after, next 4 countries Russia intend to attack. It's all being blown up so far that they have no intention of stopping. It can only be very, very deliberate.
Well, Glenn, why don't you go ahead and give us an update on what's happening in the Middle East, and then I'll throw some more into the mix.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wish I had some good news, but as usual, there's fuck all good news. Now, I've been looking at, which has actually come from the Israelis. The Israelis have come out with a report that's highlighted a sharp rise in settler violence, as if we can't already see that on our TV screens. There's been a huge rise in settler violence, and they put a figure on it of 63% rise in settler violence in the first half of 2026. Ian's gone, oh, that's it, as compared to 2025. And these figures have been released by the Israelis themselves, and they show that 1,185 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied West Bank in the last 3 years. And that includes 250 children. And these are Israeli figures, which are probably, as far as I'm concerned, an underestimate. Now, last year, of course, Israel's national security minister, the delightful Ben-Gvir, made a pledge that every Israeli settler will be armed by the government. And since that began, these incidents of settler violence have increased dramatically. On Wednesday, Israel's High Court actually ordered Netanyahu to explain why he hasn't fired Ben-Gvir from his post because of an ongoing court case about his conduct, his actual conduct in office. And in their ruling, 5 Supreme Court judges demanded that Netanyahu explain why he has not ordered Gvir's removal, which was supposed to happen back in March this year. Now, military and settler violence, as I said, has exploded this week. And the IDF, this very day, have stormed the West Bank town of Nablus in the early hours of this morning, and they've detained around about 40 Palestinians. And this action has come in response to the violence that broke out when Israeli settlers forced their way into the village of Tal and were confronted by Palestinians who tried to defend themselves. They tried to defend their village against these armed settlers. The incident where the Palestinian man managed to snatch the rifle away from one of the armed settlers, that took place in Tal. Now, 4 Palestinians were killed, but as far as Israel is concerned, the major crime is that 2 settlers were killed. And Israel has said that Palestinian violence will not be tolerated, and those responsible will be brought to justice swiftly. In Nablus, settlers burned a mosque and they set fire to cars, and they also tried to set fire to a house that was opposite the mosque, and they smashed the window and poured petrol through the window onto a sleeping baby who was in it. Luckily, they did not actually set fire to the baby, but there had been every intention to do that. So also set fire to the village of Kur. And reports have come in this morning that two more mosques have been set alight. I'm not sure where they are located. Now, over this weekend, that to them, the weekend there is Friday and Saturday, at least 30 settler attacks have been confirmed by Israeli army radio. And there's now a call by Hamas for mass mobilization to combat settler violence. And one that I saw interview said, "Let them rise up. We will crush them into the dirt like we did in Gaza." And this has been echoed by several members of the Knesset who are calling for the IDF to level Palestinian towns and villages in revenge for the 2 settler deaths, not forgetting that it was the settlers who attacked. Now, across the West Bank, settlers have set up checkpoints, stopping Palestinian cars and attacking the occupants. So the West Bank is essentially now basically in lockdown. People are staying in their homes to try and defend them. But the Palestinian police and fire services have been prevented from attending arson attacks by the army. So there is no help for Palestinians. They've only got themselves to rely on. And settlers are now operating a curfew across most of the West Bank. And anyone caught outside after dark is being attacked by mobs of settlers who are openly roaming Palestinian areas. Moving to Gaza, in Gaza, 7 Palestinians have been killed and 36 others wounded in the last 24 hours alone. And the daily attacks since the ceasefire last October have now killed at least 1,200 people and wounded 3,888, according to the Palestinian Health Authority. So much for the ceasefire. And finally, in other news, this week, America signed a deal with Saudi Arabia to help them enrich uranium. The Saudis have refused the inspection protocols of the IAEA, which 140 countries have signed up to, and which Iran was complying with under Obama's nuclear deal, the one that Trump tore up. Now, Saudi Arabia rejects inspection on the grounds that it is intrusive. Donald Trump has signed a national security waiver for Saudi Arabia to allow America to assist it in enriching uranium. And strangely enough, this comes after the Saudis paid Jared Kushner $100 million, and they put a further $2 billion into his development firm. And in addition, the Saudis put $6 billion into LIV Golf, which basically pays Trump properties to host golf events. And they've put $10 billion into Trump's real estate deals in Jeddah and Riyadh. That's in the last couple of years. Now, meanwhile, the Iran war is being pursued in order to stop Iran from enriching uranium. The Trump administration have said that what they're doing with Saudi Arabia is not double standards, because Iran is it claims the axis of terrorism compared to Saudi, which is the world's biggest sponsor of Sunni Muslim terrorism through Al Qaeda and other Sunni Muslim terror groups. So Trump has declared that its assistance, the assistance that America will give, is dependent on Saudi Arabia recognizing the state of Israel. And he said, we need to be firm and not stutter on this. He said, Saudi must recognize Israel and must not recognize Palestine. So there are the sort of some of the points from this week. As usual, there's a lot more to report on, but they were the ones that stuck out to me. Okay.
Yeah, Trump's doing his usual lying through his teeth and making shit up as he goes along. He is Netanyahu's bitch, and Netanyahu said, no, Saudi can't have enriched uranium because we're the only nuclear power in the Middle East. So that's when Trump says, oh, well, look, it wasn't me, it was my fucking energy minister got a bit above himself and said that Saudi didn't do this. But Saudi has to follow the Abraham Accords, which Saudi has said it won't. But that's not the only country in the Middle East that Trump's done this to. He sat with Erdogan in fucking Turkey and said, yes, we love you, we need you, and we're going to give you F-35s. And now he's gone and turned around and gone, no, you're not getting F-35, because Israel doesn't want you to have F-35s. The Houthis, Saudi has been attacking Yemen, and the Houthis have been responding. The Houthis have just blown up again this day Israeli ship, naval ship. Oh, I wonder how that's going to go down. The Saudis, by attacking Yemen, provoked Yemen first into blockading the Saudi oil. So now we've got no oil coming out of Hormuz, no oil going through Bab el-Mandab, and Yemen has struck the Aramco refinery or oil installation in Saudi Arabia. We're fucked with a capital F in every which way you can think of. And it's not just the price of petrol or diesel going up at the fuel pump. I have some very severe fucking warnings to give people when we transition to the next part of the show. But we've also got both Musk and Sam Altman out there today saying that we're living in the time of the singularity. Now, remember, the singularity means that that's when AI becomes sentient. And they're both saying, Musk says in 10 years, you won't have any money, you won't need any money. Altman's saying, the AI will be like a genie. It will be able to grant you any wish. My wish AI, Altman, Musk, and all the rest of the fuckers would fuck off. That's what I wish. Here's
Make it
a
so.
reality check. And it's the first of my very dire warnings for today. There is a man called the Health Ranger, and he has a very large YouTube. He's got a very large following. He tracks food worldwide. He imports food from all around the world, and his laboratories do work on them to see their nutritional values, etc., etc. Well, he was on Daniel Davis' Deep Dive, and I encourage people to go and watch it because I don't have the time to go into the minutiae that he does. So I'll just give you the highlights. He now says that famine is baked in the cake for the years 2027 and 2028. That 15% of the world's population may well die from starvation. They will be in the global south. Here in the Western world, in the UK, US, prices of foodstuffs are going to skyrocket, and the shelves will not have the depth. You won't get the same choice. You're going to be paying more and getting less. But for the fucktards that think immigration is an issue now, when 400 million, because that's what we're talking, people on the global south start to starve to death because of the lack of fertilizer, because of the lack of nitrates, because of crop failures, you are going to literally have, you listening to USA, you listening ICE, you are going to have millions of people in South America coming up north in the hope of finding food. In Europe, in the UK, we are going to face a humanitarian catastrophe when millions of people from Africa, from Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and from the Middle Eastern countries pick up sticks and try and come here where they perceive there to be the potential of having more food. What say you, Alex? I mean, I can't sugarcoat any of this shit. Famine is coming, and it's been done by design, and that angers me. People are going to die of hunger, and it's been done by design, and that fucking angers me. What do you say, Alex?
Yeah. Well, first off, I don't see AI as a genie. If AI can grant wishes, AI is the monkey's paw. That's what AI's wishes will be granted like. But I'm waiting for somebody, and nobody has at the moment, at least that's one thing, but I'm waiting for somebody to put in, oh, well, we've still got food, we're growing food fine, or the usual comments. But when it's being universally recognised, when they're doing everything they can to make everybody eat less, whether that's by chucking them on medications, whether that's by pushing the anti-meat agenda, pushing all of it, They know something's coming this way. And they've hinted, they've drip fed, they've told us time and time again. And when people are hungry, civilization goes out the window. People worry about what people are invading now. When people are hungry and invading, or what they actually for once are, not what they're doing now, then you'll see something completely different. When people in this country are hungry, even if it's just less than they're used to, you're going to see different attitudes. You're going to see people fighting over the last loaf on the shelf. You're going to see that angrier world they've been pushing and pushing about. And there's no sugarcoating, like you say, and there's no ignoring. Even those burying their heads in the sand sooner or later are going to notice.
Plant a garden now is my advice. But be prepared to have to defend it. Start a compost heap now, but be prepared to have to defend it. And then pray. Because crops, plants shut down, stigmata at 29 degrees. And these heat waves and these heat domes aren't going away. And when it's not so hot that the plants won't fucking grow, even the BBC is reporting on potato failures in the south of England. So when crops won't grow, you better pray that your crops that you're trying to grow won't be decimated by sudden giant hailstorms that are becoming more normal. Last night, there was a massive water spout in the Mediterranean and a lightning storm that went on for hours where there was more than one flash of lightning per second. Per second. The world is experiencing weather phenomena that has never been seen before. And then we have the rise of AI. None of it bodes well. And this is the year that Deagle predicted that millions would die globally. Yes, Edward Deagle was an insider. Glenn, any thoughts before we transition into the second part of the show?
Yeah, I was strangely enough, I was saying a very similar thing to Jackie today. We've got a little patch of lawn just outside here, and I think I last cut that 3 weeks ago. It has not grown a single inch. It grown after this heat wave started. It's brown and dry and dead. This sometimes happens in the summer, but we are seeing the heat that we're getting on a different level, and it feels different as well. The sun feels a lot harsher. I don't know. It perhaps that's me getting old. The fact that I've got no hair and my head burns easy, but it does feel painful on my head. So yes, I agree on the weather side, and the fact that we in Britain are so reliant. We are very, very, very reliant on imports. on imported foodstuffs. The days when we were self-sufficient are long, long, long past. So, you know, we're a small island with possibly 80 million, people living on it. And we don't have the ability to feed all of those mouths. So anything that happens out there in the world at scale affects us directly. And when it comes to shortages, people basically pull up the drawbridge. Countries will not be wanting to export food when their own populations need that food. So we could be in a very great deal of trouble. But yeah, so not good on any front. Not good on the war fronts. Not good on the future prospects that we have. Nothing good. And I would have liked to, you know, there being some little ray of hope, like the the amazing speech of Andy Burnham, who said everything was going to change and things were going to get better and we're all going to live in a kind of Tony Blair utopia. But unfortunately, I can't see that happening either. So nothing good.
No, Blair managed to hide the evil he was doing under a thin veneer of cool Britannia. Burnham is just he's a Blair puppet, but there'll be no more cool Britannia. It'll be cruel Britannia, I'm afraid. Okay, Alex, let's transition.
He's talking about industrialization. Sorry, I just he's talking about reindustrialization. How are we going to reindustrialize in Britain when we have the highest energy costs in the world? How are we going to do that? It's never going to get off the ground. The man's an idiot. Anyway, sorry.
Well, that's what we started with. We're led by morons and fucking lunatics.
Yeah.
Morons and lunatics. And it's all by design. Yes, let's get into the next part of the broadcast.
Yeah.
See him wasted in the saddle. He comes riding through your town. He's wearing yesterday's misfortunes like a smile. Once he had a future full of money, love, and dreams, but he spent like it was going out of style. But he just keeps on believing that for better or for worse, he's searching for a shrine he's never found. Never knowing if believing is a lesson or a curse, or if going up is worth coming down. He's a poet and a picker. He's a prophet and a pusher. He's a pilgrim and a preacher, and a problem when he's stoned. He's this walking contradiction, partly truth and partly fiction. He's taken every wrong direction on a lonely road back home. He has tasted good and evil in the bedrooms and the bars. He's traded in tomorrows for today. He's running from his demons and he's reaching for the stars, leaving everything he's loved along the way. And the world just keeps on turning, so for better or for worse, all he ever gets is older and around. From the rocking of his cradle to the rolling of the hearse, going up's not worth coming down. But he's a poet and a picker. He's a prophet and a pusher. He's a pilgrim and a preacher, and a problem when he's stoned. He's this walking contradiction, partly truth, he's partly fiction. He's taken every wrong direction on a lonely road back home.
Welcome, pilgrims. We know you must truly be exhausted. God knows I fucking am. Of traversing a world that has truly gone insane. The internet is now a morass of misinformation, disinformation, shyster, shooster, snake oil salesmen, AI fakes, AI bots, and just cunts, let's face it. But somehow, some way, you found your way here this afternoon. So do take a seat at our campfire. Pour yourself a beverage. Personally, I'd make it an adult one and I'd make it fucking strong. Roll yourself something warm and brown and golden to get you through this day because this afternoon, this lone gunman is going to ride again. I decided to transition Alex and Glenn because there is so much going on that if we didn't, God knows how long we could have spent just on how bad things are getting. And I didn't touch upon the wildfires. Wildfires in Scotland, wildfires in France and Spain. And of course, in Spain, the wildfires are so bad that they're lamenting the fact that they can't use their very good Russian helicopters that were designed for putting out fires because of the Russian fucking sanctions. That's how crazy and bizarre the world has got. The climate is truly getting out of control. The oceans are dying, and I mean dying. The oceans are deoxifying. Let me give you a hint, people. No viable oceans, no humans. Capiche? Look at a thing called Canfield Oceans. I've mentioned it before. And into this mix, we have the growing knowledge that the planet can no longer sustain the 8 billion souls which inhabit it. Well, Star Trek, what's it? What's the series? It's the one that's just out now. Brave New World. The one with Pike. It's a prequel to the original Star Trek. Well, it aired. It's just aired. It's the first episode of the new series, which is now out here in the UK. And it was an interesting watch. In it, by an accident, caught in a solar storm, the Enterprise is hurled back in time 65 million years to an age when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth. But there was a thriving civilization on Mars who were at war with the 5th planet in the solar system, which was inhabited by insectoid species. And the Martians steal the warp core, the main warp core from the Enterprise, and use it as a weapon to blow up this 5th planet called Krypton, which produces the Kuiper Belt, which produces a chunk of it which hits the Earth and there's the asteroid that wipes out the dinosaurs, and they're able to ride the energy wave back to the present, to their temporal present. Nowadays, none of that seems very fucking far-fetched to me. I, I don't know about you. Um, Time is acting extremely weird. So here's a challenge for folks. Get an old fashioned if you can. Wind that clock and compare it to what your digital devices linked to the internet are telling you. You'll find that they're very rapidly, over a matter of days, you will notice a difference of several minutes. Time speeding up. What does it all add up to? I don't know. Maybe Alex and Glenn does. Glenn, are you? Would anything surprise you anymore?
No, very little. I think we've been so thoroughly sort of overwhelmed by stuff and bombarded with things that, such as Star Trek, making all those connections. You know, they've taken the elements that we think that we know about, and they've pieced them together in it to form a different kind of narrative. But it's a narrative that many people can sort of see. Well, yeah, well, perhaps there was a civilization on Mars, you know, that is being, you know, covered up. Perhaps perhaps there was this war. This planet was destroyed. We know that there was a planet that was destroyed. So all the elements are there in that story, but just rearranged to tell a different kind of version. So, and nobody's really, I certainly wouldn't, very surprised by that, because we don't know what the truth is anyway. We're lied to, constantly lied to. I don't have any faith in any politicians or anybody in authority anymore, because they just lie, and they lie blatantly. And when they're caught out in those lies, they don't even apologize, and they just go on lying in a different way. So yeah, I think everybody is in that kind of shell-shocked position where virtually anything could be true, and none of us really know, what we're being fed is bullshit or the truth. No one can discern between the two anymore, hardly. So yeah, so I'm not surprised. No. Short answer.
Alex, would anything surprise you at this point?
No, I don't think so. There's always been that element of predictive programming in sci-fi. They've always sneaked little snippets in, little bits of information that they tell you. I don't necessarily think the Enterprise went back and destroyed the dinosaurs, but there'll be elements of truth within that. There'll be elements of truth in everything they tell us, because it's all that drip, drip, drip. And then we can, at the end of the day, say, oh, nobody ever told us this, because it will get to a point that fiction and fact blur and merge so much that nobody really knows what they heard where. And they can just turn around and say, well, we told you all along, and nobody will know any different.
Reportedly, in Nixon's final days, he left a time capsule somewhere in the White House. We know Trump and his Uncle John were deeply involved in the whole UAP thing. We've heard stories of Project Looking Glass. We've heard all sorts of craziness. Well, apparently Nixon told this insider. The insider said, "So, what are these aliens like? Is it like Star Trek?" Nixon said, "Oh, we are so far beyond Star Trek." And then you have officials in the White House who casually drop into things. Yeah, we've got teleportation. And you have to wonder, do they? At this point, nothing would surprise me. So, Alex, I love these shows especially because I literally have no idea what you two are going to hit me with this afternoon beyond what I saw in the meme that you put out. So, why don't you go first and bring us what you've been looking at this week without my knowledge, and we'll see if I got enough red string left to connect all of those when you and Glenn are done.
Okay. Well, I've been, as some of you know, going up and down the country a lot. So I've been spending a lot of time traveling. So I thought, well, I'll have a look at something this week that gives me some reading material. So I've been looking at The Adventures of Little Baron Trump. And there's 2 books, and there's a third one that often gets linked with them but isn't directly connected. Now, I've stayed away from that third one because I only get so many hours in a day, so I haven't read The Last President. But I've been looking at the first 2, or the 2 Little Baron Trump novels. So the second one is the one that gets talked about a lot. So I thought I'd start with the first one. And this tells the whole history of the main character, which is Little Baron Trump. So I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to tell you the story of his adventures and the stories of his second adventures. And then we're going to look at some of that information and whether back in 2017, when people started noticing that Trump Jr. or Donald and Melania's son was called Baron and started drawing parallels. I'm going to see, are there any parallels, or is that just people being slightly deluded? Well, the story starts, and if you've ever read them, you'll know they're a little strange. If you haven't, you've ever read Alice in Wonderland, then trust me, these books make Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland look perfectly sane and normal. They're quite strange, let's put it that way. They follow very similar style in many ways to the Alice novels. But the first introduction we hear, I can't help it, just sends me straight back to Monty Python, because it's his ancestor he talks about, the armless knight. Now, he really wanted to go to the Crusades, and his family weren't too keen. He said, how are you going to fight in the Crusades with no arms? But he tells the story of how he did, and he had swords attached to his stirrups so he could ride into battle. And he was such a valiant knight that even Saladin took to him and sent him. The thing you'll find through these stories is an obsession with getting given somebody's princess and being sent somebody's daughter to marry, or be trying to arrange things. So Saladin sends him this woman who then gets in with and ends up going off with the armless knight and marrying him. And this is the ancestor, and it comes down through the centuries to Little Baron Trump. Now, Baron is in the books his title, although that's a little strange because technically in Hereditary, he wouldn't be a Baron until his dad is dead, but he talks about Baron Senior and he's considered the Little Baron Trump. Now, when he's born, the book starts with the scenario. He doesn't know when he was born. It may have been on the top of a mountain. It may have been on the peninsula. It may have been somewhere else. And they tell this story of his parents and his parents traveling, and they go through different lands in the depths of Africa, and they end up, this is where they will start. They will start their stories somewhere in the real world, and then they end up either on some island or peninsula or something that is completely different, where they meet these people called or what he titles the Melodious Sneezers. And apparently they do not have a language as recognized. They communicate by sneezing, and their sneezes have a different pitch or tone depending on what they want to say. So he calls them the Melodious Sneezers. Now, this argument is made that the whole atmosphere is filled with insects of such infinitesimal size that they're always making them sneeze, or breathing them in, they're always making them sneeze. It says insects, but then it starts talking about life forms of an infinitesimal tiny. So his parents meet these, and they stay. This is a pattern throughout all the ventures. They go somewhere, they stay with these people, and usually they end up, when it gets to Little Baron, they end up having to run away or escape because he's upset somebody. But his parents go up to the mountains of the moon, and I don't think it's literally the moon, it's just the name that are given to them. And the air is so thin that they lose partial consciousness. He escapes by using donkeys that he binds over their nose so they can't eat, so they try to head for home to find food. And they drag them down. This is the argument as to why he doesn't know whether he's born on a mountain, a peninsula, or whatever. But he is born, and he is born at the point that they meet these Melodious Sneezers. The first thing he does when he's born, there's a dog in the palace that has a litter of puppies, and he picks one of these puppies, and he puts his hand on the head of this puppy and chooses it, and this becomes his companion in all his travels, and he names him Bulger. Now, the thing you start seeing quite early on in this, the way it's portrayed, it's Baron that's calling the shots. He grows in intelligence, and apparently his head grows bigger than ever before, and he's the one with the intelligence, and he's the one telling his mother and his father what to do, and ordering effectively the Aldebaran, as he calls him, around. Now, the other thing you start seeing is the Trump family. They consistently seem to end up in a situation where they lose the family fortune. And basically, in each case of this, it's Baron that saves the day. But he wants to get out of that situation. He wants to go on his travels, and he basically starts causing so much trouble that they let him go. Didn't know what the next slide was, sorry. And there's this whole thing where they have him, his dad picks where he sails from. So he sails out of this place in the North Sea, which is called No Man's Port. And he has to get past a whirlpool. He has to get past something called Thor's Hammer, where you've got a pillar of rock that's swaying and attacks any ship going past. And he has to get past like the shifting sands before either of those. And what you start seeing, and this is how the whole stories are portrayed, it's him reasoning his way out of things, him being the ultimate problem solver and finding ways past this, and everybody else doing what he says because he knows best. And this is how the stories are told. So he sails out of Port No Man's Port and he sails out into the unknown and he finds this island. He goes on to the island and he meets these people, which he christens Wind Eaters. Now, when he first meets them, they look almost skeletal. It's like this, like skin and bones with no flesh on their bodies. And they look tiny, they look shrunken, they look shriveled. They meet them a bit concerned at first, and then they say, no, you must come and meet our king. And they go off to get permission from the king to conduct him to the king. And this is the other thing you find, he's always meeting kings, princes, never eats ordinary people. He's always taken to the heart of the royal family or whatever. So they come back, and when they come back, he doesn't see the same. He sees these giant figures, almost like, he describes them as Japanese wrestlers, like this, the whole sumo wrestler sort of look. And as it goes on, he finds out that they don't eat, they don't drink, they exist on eating, if you like, the wind, and he calls them wind eaters. Now, basically, when the wind blows, they absorb that, and there's apparently enough sustenance within the wind and within what's carried on the wind to keep them alive. And when they've just eaten, they blow up effectively. And when they haven't, they look like a shriveled old person. Now, like I say, the story always goes, he stays with these people, he gets on great with these people. So he meets the king, which is Tuishwish, and he meets the first person he meets, which is Go With, and they stay for a little while, but then there's an accident where he ends up popping a load of the kids, because when they're blown up, they're easy to pop. And then the king gets attacked by Go With, and he wants to do, because he's still angry about these kids that got popped, he's trying to do Baron Trump in. The king protects him at first, but in the end, he has to get out of there when he realizes they want to keep him there forever and they want to marry him to their daughter. As I said, it seems to be a recurring theme of them trying to marry him to their daughter. So he wants to get out. He finally gets away. They capture him and they throw nets over him and start beating him with clubs. But there's no weight to any of them, so it takes quite a while. And the dog comes and rescues him and takes him back to the ship. That's his first adventure. When he gets back, he's presented by the local emperor with the Grand Cross of the Crimson Cincture. This is just like made up on the honour within the books. And then he sets out for his second adventure, where he goes to Sculpture's Isle. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but he looks for an island where 7 Roman sculptors who had sculpted a lady called Paula, they'd all sculpted her, and then they'd ended up killing her because they wanted no one else to be able to sculpt her and sort of do better than them. So they get exiled, but instead of being killed, Caesar exiles them to this island because he says their artwork saves them. And he goes there and he finds Roman temples and all this sculpture, and he can't find any people. He doesn't think there are any people until he meets what he calls the slow movers. And they've almost turned into sculptures themselves, and they move really slowly and speak really slowly. But there is movement, there is life. But from a passing look, they almost look as if they're sculptures. In the end, for once, he doesn't get driven away, but once he leaves because he's tiring them out. You can see he's tiring them out. He's tiring him out, not having anyone to communicate with other than sort of one word every half hour. And he can tell he's tiring them out because he moves too quickly and he speaks too quickly, even when he tries not to for them. So he leaves and he comes home again, and he wants to get away again not long after. But this time, the senior baron doesn't want him to go because, again, he's having problems and actually causing issues with losing his fortune again. And it turns out the reason behind this is that all his fields are overrun with mice, with moles and with ground squirrels. So Baron thinks about this for a while and he solves the problem. He solves the problem with the moles by capturing 100 of them and shaving their claws down so that it confuses the whole colony and it makes them move, what's left, move on and leave the ones without any claws to die. He solves the ground squirrels by putting marbles down their holes, which after a bit, because of their nature, they try to eat, and that breaks all of their teeth, and then they can no longer devour a nut enough to get sustenance, so basically starves them to death. And the problem he has with the mice is he has mousers, he's got cats, but they won't go in that area because it's a very wet meadow. So what he does is he puts rubber boots on these cats, or he pulls like rubber things over these cats, and then he takes them out and he trains them and he keeps them a day without eating and takes them and trains them until they get all the mice in this field, and he clears the mice, and then he gets to go on his adventures again. Now his third adventure, and I'm not going to go through all of the ones in the first book. The third adventure, he goes through the Great Aryan Forest, and he meets it. And basically, this is he starts out from Iran in this case, and he travels through Tehran, and he travels with a group, and I can't think of the word at the moment; it's gone out of my head. But he travels with them, and then he gets to this Great Aryan Forest, and he finds a blind hermit who is his guide through it, called Bene Aga. He leads him through, and on the other side, he gets out, he gets down, he has to use his problem-solving skills again, and he gets down this steep staircase to a land with many rivers flowing through it. And he meets these people called Umi Lubars, which he names manhoppers, because basically they're like dwarfs, but they've got tiny little heads and arms and really long, powerful legs, and they cross these rivers by jumping. Again, the story repeats. He gets taken to their leader, he gets taken to their king, King Garu, and he gets quite in with him. Again, he wants to marry him to his daughter, the Princess Hopper Hopper, and he wants to get out of there. He ends up escaping because he's worked out that they won't go near the water. They'll hop over the rivers, but they won't go near the water. So he escapes on his bed, sailing it down the middle of these rivers. And like I say, it goes on in this vein. His next one starts out in China, and so on and so forth. But that brings us to the second book. That's him sailing down the river in his bed. The second book is Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. I'm not going to go through this in so much detail, but it starts with him coming into possession of a 15th century Spanish manuscript entitled A World Within a World. And it basically promotes an idea of the earth being hollow and the inside of the earth being inhabited by various different races. And when he's translating and reading this document, it says in one point, the ages and ages ago, terrible disturbance had taken place on its surface and had driven the inhabitants to seek refuge in these vast underground chambers. So he decides he's going to look for the portal, for the entrance into the inner, or to the world within a world. Now, he starts off in this case in Russia, and he travels to the northern Urals, and he's looking for a place. And the one message in this manuscript was the people will tell you. So he's talking to the locals, and they keep talking to him about a place called Giant's Well. So he tries to find this place. He has different guides. Some of them turn on him. Some of them help him but have to run away. And he eventually finds it himself with a bit of advice. And he finds it. And he tries to go down and take Bulger, who goes with him everywhere, down into what was called Giant's Well. And he gets into the base of the well, or what they call in the well, and he finds what's called Polyphemus's funnel. Now, the problem is he's a little bit too big to get through it, but again, he uses his problem-solving issues, and he rubs himself with black lead and ties his arms tight so he makes himself smaller, and he eventually gets down through this portal into the world within a world. And he meets different people within this world. And he starts out with meeting the Micamenkes, who are basically transparent. They live in like marble halls, and they're basically transparent. And all of them within their clothes, they have a shape that allows you to see through to their hearts, because you're supposed to be able to look through and see your neighbour's heart, whether it's beating fast, whether it's beating slow. And this is a part of their body language, their communication. So he meets again the king and the princess, or the queen in this case, and the princess, Queen Galaxia and Princess Crystalina. And he moves on from that, and in a while he meets other peoples in this vast world within a world. He meets King Galidus, and that's in this ice-bound underground kingdom. As he moves on from the one carriage traveling through this underground world, he meets, he finds this ice-bound kingdom where everything is ice. And finally, he moves on and he meets the Formifolk, which are described as human-like ants. And he meets them, and they only communicate, they can't speak, they're dumb and mute, and they say hello by touching the front of their forehead and goodbye by touching the back of their heads. And he learns, in all these places, he learns their language and all this scenario. But these are the third group of people that he meets. So these are the adventures of Little Baron Trump. But it's a children's story, or children's stories. Is there anything more to it than that? Are there any similarities? Are there any parallels that we can draw? Are there any messages within their pages? Well, that's what I wanted to know, and that's what I wanted to ask. And the rest of this may be pure fantasy. This may be my mind thinking of strange things, or there may be something in it. I'm sure you can already see some things in what's said. So let's look at Little Baron Trump, shall we, for a start? Is there any similarities with Trump's youngest son, with Melania's son, with Baron? Apparently, Trump liked the name. Apparently, he was getting people to call him Baron. I think it comes in with his sense of wanting to be some form of nobleman, that sort of attitude. But he liked the name and he picked the name. Apparently, Melania picked the middle name because this is Baron William Trump. Now, the character in our stories is Baron with one R because it's a title, but it's Baron Wilhelm Henrik Sebastian Trump, von Trump. Now, that name also got changed as they moved about with the history of the family. They moved about different countries. But at the point of Baron Wilhelm Trump, we had the family in Germany. Now, I think if you dig back into Trump's ancestry, you might find a very similar history there. But you've got Baron William Trump and you have Baron Wilhelm Trump, von Trump. So we got certain similarity, but I'm sure it's just accidental. Or maybe he read the books as a kid and something stuck in his head that he just forgot when naming his child. Or is there more to it than that? Where it starts getting interesting is when you look at some of the later issues of the books and you actually look at the imagery they use. Now, this would be more people illustrating in hindsight, but this is one of the later versions. And there's quite a similarity with the young Baron. This is also one of the later versions. This was published in 2020. And I find it very interesting, the characters of his father, the Baron, and the Baroness to the sides of the window. Looks very much, at least the Baron, certainly, the old Baron certainly looks very similar to a certain Donald J. I do find it interesting, the hidden hand in the portrait as well. But like I say, these are not done at the time the book came out. So these are later illustrations, later interpretations. So we can't take too much from that. But let's look at the character. He's portrayed as being, now I don't know much about Baron Trump or the actual modern day Baron Trump. I couldn't judge on his intelligence or other. The character in the books is portrayed as being greatly intelligent. He's portrayed, and the first thing he does when he's a child is he picks out the dog. He picks out this dog, Bulger. Now, the first thing that hit me on this was the whole allegory. Now, historical portraits, you would always, the king or the king's son was often portrayed with their hands on quite a large dog. It's supposed to represent the ability to control untamable forces. So I find it interesting they do this same imagery with the Baron Trump character. But does that really, I can't necessarily relate that to the current Baron Trump, but I just find that an interesting allegory. So let's go with the melodious sneezers, shall we? Because this is where, in the books, the Trump family and the older Trump, the old elder Baron, as he calls them in the books, comes first into prominence. They talk about infinitesimal insects, but they talk about infinitesimal life forms. What if we're not seeing an insect? And the whole thing of sneezing, what if we're seeing a smaller life form than an insect? What if we're seeing a virus? What if there is some message there at the start of this story? Because much as the Trump fans like to ignore it, I remember Warp Speed and I remember all of that nonsense. But maybe that's just nothing. But then there's a bit, I said he always manages to save his father's fortune. Well, there's a bit in it. The first time he saves his father's fortune, he does it by telling him what to do, and his father does what he says. And what he tells him to do, he says, talk to the makers of almanacs and get the right to produce weather forecasts. Get the right to print weather forecasts in all the almanacs that are coming out. Get the right for this whole year. And he does it. And then he says, well, okay, I've got that. And he says, well, put this parchment in, spread this among all the almanacs, get this parchment. And the parchment said that it's going to be a really cold winter, that there's going to be massive problems with food. You need to protect your food stocks. You need to prepare for a cold spell. You need to be able to keep warm. And then he has his father buy up all the pelts that can be bought. He has his father buy up all the wood or the coal or the peat that can be bought. And then these weather forecasts goes out and everybody wants to buy it. So then they have to buy it from the Trumps at a higher price. Well, I don't know about parallels, but I'd say that little Baron Trump was certainly playing the markets. And I would say his modern day equivalent likes to do exactly the same. But let's get on to his adventures. Oh, and just before he goes off, what's the first one he goes off on? Sorry, I've missed that. The Wind Eaters. He goes and meets the Wind Eaters. Well, this story of the history of the Wind Eaters, and the reason he escapes is because they want him, they think he's becoming like one of them. They want him to become like one of them. Well, it starts, ironically, with them eating the fruits and the things from the trees and the fish and the shellfish on this island where they live. And then it stops producing a lot of the bounty. So they start having to eat less. and it stops again producing less and less, to the point that they end up living on the gum from the trees. And as they do, they don't need their teeth, they don't need the things, and evolution sets in so that they cease to be able to take solid food, and they just eat the gum from the trees. And then it goes on until all that is left for them is what's carried on, the slight sustenance in what's carried on the wind. And when they breathe in, they take their sustenance from that. Well, to me, this really paints a picture. Well, we were talking earlier on today of famine. We were talking earlier on of food shortages. And this, to me, after what could potentially be a virus, his first adventure is talking food shortages, potentially, is talking people surviving on a subsistence level of nourishment. But he's not for him. He wants out, and he leaves that situation. When he gets back, the emperor gives him the Grand Cross of the Crimson Cincture as a made-up honour. But when you search Grand Cross of the Crimson Cincture, you get some interesting things. You get links to Templars, you get links to the Freemasons, and you even get, through the Grand Cross part of it, even links into some of the Nazi honours and Freemasonry, of course, in there as well. But I'm sure it's none of those whatsoever. I'm sure it's just a made-up honour that has no reference to anything. But then he goes next to, what's the next one? Oh, he goes next and he meets the man hoppers. But he does that through travelling through Iran, through travelling through an area with lots of rivers and areas and things. For some reason, I can't help picturing, sure it has nothing to do with it, but the whole idea of Trump sailing down the middle of a narrow and widening river, trying to escape from the man hoppers. Just for some reason, I picture the Straits, but I'm sure there's nothing in that either. But then we get to the Marvelous Underground journey. Well, you've got two things in there. You've got the whole concept of that, a great disturbance that led to people going underground. And to me, that just pictures Derenuko and the things that we've talked about many times before with underground cities. And he meets different peoples, he meets the different races, and at the end, he meets the Formifolk, which are basically ant people, which leads us potentially back to the Hopi prophecies. So is there anything in these stories? Are they pure children's fiction, or do they tell stories that predict the modern world? I find it interesting that we move from people that were potentially affected by viruses making them sneeze to starvation to a final run underground via conflict with Iran and the one I didn't go into with China, which follows the one he starts out with Iran. And then we start looking for portals in Russia. So I don't know. Maybe it's all fiction. Maybe there's nothing in any of it. But I find interesting that the third book written by the guy, and I haven't read this one, is actually just called The Last President. So interesting. Very interesting books. A little, if a little strange.
Yes, just a little bit strange, Alex. Let's start with that third book, The Last President. And let's just note that Trump has now come out officially and said he intends to run for a third term. Now, what's strange about that is when he made that announcement, when he made that announcement, one cheeky reporter said to him, well, if you're going to run for a third term, Mr. Trump, does that mean Barack Obama can also run for a third term? Trump was silent and sullen for a moment and then said no. But make no mistake, folks, there are maneuverings to end democracy, and not just America, but across the free world. There are books, Alice in Wonderland, Gulliver's Travels, The Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump, that the Epstein class do seem to love very much. And I wonder, Glenn's talked about the mystery schools. I do wonder whether these books have served as a way of passing knowledge down to those that can interpret the allegories in the books. And of course, in The Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump, his mentor is Don, and the father is beset by all the losing family fortune. How many times has Trump been bankrupt?
Yeah.
And then we do have this very curious thing. That whether you're talking about the Marvelous Adventures or remember the Delfschow, the airships, and the one with Trump on it, and Trump and Tricky Nicky had a deep friendship and correspondence. And Nixon's wife, who claimed to be psychic, said very early on that Trump should run for president. We've even got the fucking goddamn Simpsons showing Trump running for president. Isn't it curious that apparently the giant fucking orange Oompa Loompa was always destined to be president at this time right now? Just some thoughts before we go to Glenn and ask Glenn. One, any thoughts on that, all that, Glenn, and then please bring to us what you've been looking at.
Alex was making when she was talking about the ant people, what immediately jumped out was this is straight from the Hopi legends of being taken underground by the ant people because of an impending disaster or some kind of world shattering event. There are the whole thing is scattered with little, I don't know, the ends of pieces of string that you can start to tug on, and so how does this relate? Is there, just as Alex said, is there any connection? One thing that jumped out at me was the fact that wherever little Baron Trump seemed to go, he ended up causing trouble and getting chased out. And I thought, well, that's very reminiscent, perhaps not of little Baron Trump, but of his father, who seems to cause trouble wherever he goes, and seems to get offered the sort of daughters of all these kings, and Trump was very fond of people's daughters as well. So I found that another sort of point But yeah, there were many, many, many. And I must admit, I've not read these books. I've done a bit of skimming through the Last President, but I haven't actually read the whole book. So, but fascinating. I found that whole thing fascinating. Now I actually know what these stories contain. So, and
Of course, sorry, Glenn, I was going to say
no,
that the
go on,
movie,
yeah,
The
sorry, no,
Odyssey, Homer, the Odyssey has
no,
just come
no.
out in the movie, and someone else who seems to be destined to be in the middle of these times, Boris Johnson, tried to make himself
Mm.
very clever in an interview by saying, "Well, yes, of course, I've seen the movie and it's terrific, it's tremendous, but of course, I've also read the book Boris, so fucking I." So yes, but on your go, Glenn.
Right. Now, I'm not sure you're going to have any find any parallels between what Alex chose to cover and what I chose to cover, but because it was a completely free and random choice. So for today's show, I brought you a series of fascinating mysteries, I suppose. And it's the fascinating mysteries of ancient stonework. Because as someone, I'm very, very interested in history, and I'm very interested in not only in the overall sort of play out of history and all the ramifications. I'm quite interested in the minutiae of how people did things, and sometimes how people did things that would seem almost impossible to do today. And ancient stonework has a lot of these sort of characteristics, because much of it is very precisely carved, and often from some of the hardest stone on earth, such as granite or diorite. And these hard stones have been cut and shaped and polished with such precision and such accuracy that the kind of standard explanations of how they were sort of manufactured almost seem inadequate, really. So let's start with a fairly simple one, a sort of simple example. And that is what Egyptologists call the stone sarcophagus of Khufu, which is contained within the Great Pyramid of Giza. I've started with this because this is something I've seen and something I've physically touched. So I thought that was a good point. So let's have a look at slide 1 at the stone, what is called the stone sarcophagus of Khufu. Now it's obviously it's been around for a long time, and it's a little bit battered, but it's basically, this thing is a granite box which was hollowed out of a single block of granite, and then it was polished both inside and outside. And although it doesn't look quite as shiny as it probably once did, it was highly polished. Now, the famous Egyptologist, a man called Findus Petrie, said of this, the craftsman who made this must have had access to tools such as we ourselves are only now inventing. Let's have a look at this man. This is Findus Petrie at slide 2. There he is. Now, he is considered by many to be the father of modern archaeology, and he was in absolute awe of the stone cutting techniques that can be found in Egypt. And he wrote, the character of the work would certainly point to diamond as being the cutting jewel, and only the considerations of its rarity in general and its absence from Egypt interfere with this conclusion. So that's what he wrote. Now, the presence of such accurately and skillfully carved stonework, dating back, if you accept the the normal archaeological explanation dating back to about 5,000 years ago. Now, that still remains much of a mystery even to this day. Now, this work was supposedly carried out at what it was believed to be the dawn of human civilization. And it isn't just the quality of the cutting and the polishing that has baffled archaeologists and researchers, but also the sheer scale of some of the stones used to build many of these ancient structures. Now, even today, experts struggle to explain how these massive blocks, in some cases, were shifted and placed so accurately. So let's stay in Egypt and let's take a look at the unfinished obelisk which is located in Aswan in Egypt. So let's have a look at this thing. At slide 3, please, Alex. There it is. And the little dots you can see on there are people. So that gives you a kind of human scale of the size of this thing. It's this truly gigantic monument was said to have been ordered by Hatshepsut, who was the 6th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. And he reigned from 1479 BC to 1458 BC. And had this thing been completed, it would have been the biggest obelisk ever erected, giving it a height of 137 feet, which is 41.75 meters for those who use that system. And it would have weighed around 1,200 tons. So this is the size, the sheer scale of this thing. Now, unfortunately, because of a flaw in the rock that caused a crack in the red granite it was being shaped from, that caused its construction to be halted. And the obelisk is actually still attached at its base to the bedrock. Now, the issue with this gigantic monument is sheer size and its sheer weight. It would kind of seem obvious that such a massive project wouldn't have been undertaken if the techniques for moving such a thing were not already well practiced. But we don't know what that technique was. Slide 4, please, Alex. Now, another unexplained aspect of this thing are the scoop marks that you can see on the surface, actually, of the obelisk and in the surrounding bedrock, which look, for all intents and purposes, as if the rock was somehow soft enough to simply scoop out, instead of being extremely hard granite. Neither of these sort of questions have been definitively answered since its discovery. And the tools that were supposedly used, we are told, were these things at slide 5. Dolerite balls. Now, dolerite is slightly harder than granite, but these are the tools, along with copper chisels, that the Egyptians are said to have used. So that in itself seems a mystery. These tools seem too simplistic to achieve the results that the Egyptians seem to have, supposedly achieved. But let's travel from Egypt and let's go to Western Bolivia, to the site of Pumapunku and Tiwanaku. Now, here is a schematic at slide 6. Alex, there we are. This is a schematic of what are called the puzzle blocks from which the site of Pumapunku was constructed. And slide 7, if we can have a look at that. Here's a close-up of the surface of one of the blocks. And these blocks are made of, or they were said to have been made from andesite, which is a type of hard volcanic rock, similar to basalt. Okay. Now, both the Tiwanaku site and the Pumapunku site basically look like they've been hit by a giant tidal wave. The blocks are scattered all over. And some of these stones weigh up to 80 tons, are actually embedded in solidified mud. How they got that way is unknown. Now, in addition to the blocks, there are platforms at Pumapunku with edges that are still sharp. They're very, they're very crisp. And the level of craftsmanship and accuracy is truly amazing. And all of this was done, according to mainstream archaeology, using stone hammers around 1500 years ago. Now, many of these blocks were hauled away and crushed up to make ballast for a railway across the Bolivian highlands in the late 1800s. They simply blew them up with dynamite and crushed them to put under the railway tracks. But enough have survived for a virtual 3D computer model to be made, which we can see here at slide 8. So this is what the door of the Puma, because that is what Pumapunku means, is thought to have looked like. So this is what the site would have looked like when it was newly finished. Now, the local Imara people, who actually still live they still live in this area and have done for a very long time, say that these stones that make up Pumapunku were not carved at all, but they say they flowed like water into molds before hardening into the shapes that we now see, which is kind of reminiscent of how the stone of the that surrounds the unfinished obelisk seems to have been somehow scooped away as if it was soft. And no one has been able to give an explanation or a demonstration of how such geometrically perfect stones like those at Pumapunku, could be made with simple stone tools and leaving no tool marks upon the blocks. Now, if the blocks are described as puzzle blocks because they have an intricate way that each block fits into its neighbor. And that system is now thought to be a protection against earthquakes, because this is located in a very, Pumapunku in the Bolivian highlands is a very seismically active area. And that actually demonstrates a technique that the way that the blocks interlock spreads the stress on the building. So it makes it far more resilient to earthquakes. And this is a science that modern engineers didn't even really fully understand until the 20th century. Another mystery is exactly where did these stones come from? Because there are no quarries that have ever been found, but somehow blocks weighing up to 100 tons were supposedly brought to the site. Now, modern research has opened a new window onto this whole mystery. And the answer has been found to lay in the chemical makeup of the stones that contain an element called natron. Slide 9, please, Alex. Now there you can see natron is also an element that the Egyptians used in mummification. And in 2024, scientists decided to test this local story that the blocks were cast into molds like concrete, basically. And they mixed local volcanic ash and sand with natron and water and made a form of paste that was then put into molds. And when set, what was created had the exact same makeup as the blocks at Pumapunku, and they were exactly the same in terms of density, in terms of chemical makeup, and in terms of hardness. So it really would appear that the local people may have been correct all along. And this is just another mystery of these ancient builders, who were perhaps more akin to, well, perhaps to chemists as much to sort of artisan stonework. Centuries before anyone else, these people were making artificial stone. So that's Pumapunku. And my final inclusion in this look at ancient stoneworking isn't included because of the finish on a single block, not because of the sort of amazing accuracy of things like interlocking blocks that have been cast, the fact that these blocks were cast from artificial stone. I've really included this because of the planning and the detailed execution that produced an entire temple from solid rock. So let's have a look here at slide 10. This is at Kalissa Temple, which is located in Ellora in India. And this is the largest megalithic carved temple in the entire world. It was cut from the top down into hard volcanic basalt. Now, to build a structure using blocks, no matter however massive, is one challenge. But to chisel out a full temple complex from solid rock is really something totally mind-blowing. Now, Kalissa contains, as you can kind of sort of see, but not to the full scale, there are halls, there are stairways, there are pillars, and there are intricate carvings, which we can see some of at slide 11. There we go. Remember, this is all carved out of a cliff, basically. And it's obvious that the builders were working to a very, very well thought out plan. It's estimated that hundreds of thousands of tons of material had to be carefully chipped away to bring this temple complex out of the rock of this hillside. Now, Kalissa is truly one of the world's greatest archaeological wonders, to my mind. And the whole complex was said to have been created in 18 years, between 756 and 773 AD. And the whole complex is dedicated to Lord Shiva. Now, the sheer scale and the technical difficulty in chiseling out this complex by hand is something that would certainly never be undertaken today. Just the cost of employing the artisans, the skilled artisans needed over an 18-year period would be completely prohibitive. It would prohibit the endeavor even starting. So the stoneworking skills of our ancestors were truly breathtaking. And the techniques by which they constructed these wonders are mostly lost. They're mostly or even misunderstood by archaeologists. But we are slowly starting to get a handle on some of the ways that they did it, like the blocks at Pumapunku, which actual mainstream archaeology still says, still denies that that's how they were constructed. So what these structures represent is the technological prowess of our ancestors in planning, in geometry, in mathematics, and in developing techniques to cut and shape the hardest of stone. Slide 12, please, Alex. Now, this is a representation of an Egyptian stone cutting saw that used a copper blade coupled with water and abrasive sand to cut through a stone block. This method would have been extremely slow, compared to modern stone saws, but it would have worked, and is really what counted. It wasn't a question of time; it was a question of getting the job done in any way that they could. So the inventiveness, in order to come up with things like this as well. So it wasn't speed, but slow, methodical process. Similarly, we now know that they employed hydraulics, water power, to lift heavy blocks. Again, a simple but very effective technique. But just how massive stones were handled in terms of moving is still largely a mystery, for which there are many theories that have been put forward, such as this at slide 13. This is vibrational levitation. This is just one of the theories that there is put forward for the ability to move very heavy things. But we simply don't know. Now, there are legends of stone softening liquids derived from plants that are around in South America that were used by ancient cultures. And in 1983, a Catholic priest in Peru said he had used this ancient knowledge given to him by tribal elders to soften stone, but he was unable to make the stone hard again. So could these stories, slide 14, please, Alex. Could these stories, like the ones surrounding Pumapunku's artificial stone, actually be grounded in truth? How could such a stone as this be manufactured? It looks for all the world like it has been squished together. So either the stone was soft enough to do it by some kind of stone softening technique, or these blocks, like the Pumapunku ones, were somehow cast. They're somehow prefabricated. But there does definitely seem these stories of stone softening, these stories of artificial stone, actually do seem to be grounded in truth. And it's a truth that we are really only just starting to rediscover, you might say. So that's why I thought this was a good topic to bring. Not a very easy topic to link to anything, especially not to Baron Trump. So I don't expect Ian to manage to do that. If he does, he's a genius. But it was. I merely brought this story because I'm fascinated by archaeology. I'm fascinated by the past, and I'm fascinated by the technical details of how things were achieved. Okay, so that was my look at ancient stone, some of ancient stonework. Okay.
Brilliant, Clint. To be fair, I hardly know where to start. I'll tell you a story. I'm getting round to rebuilding Graf's shed. and it's bigger and better than before. So, because of where I'm building it, I knew I couldn't build the back frame and then work on the back frame. I would have to build the frame and board it out and then lift it into place in order to proceed. So I built the frame, checked I could lift it, started boarding it every now and then, checked I could lift it, boarded it all out, went to lift it. No, not a chance in the world. And I'm a man who has moved 400 or 500 year old fountains weighing several tons into tight spaces using nothing more than block and tackle and good old fashioned manpower. Anyway, I was thinking about how I might achieve that when one of my mates came along, and between us, we managed to get the backup and secured. I started this broadcast by talking about the Dark Ages and all the things that were lost. Of course, the Romans had many genius inventions, including concrete that was set underwater, and when it was fractured, would continue to set. That's why we have so many Roman things that are still around today and can be visited in the world. But we forgot how to do that.
Yeah.
Rome, barons adventured took him to an island of statues and moving statues, living statues, living rock. As someone who's done a fair bit of carving in my time, it's actually fascinating to take a block of wood or a block of stone and to imagine what you want to create it into and begin chipping away until the shape emerges. Fascinating that the largest temple complex that you pointed out was dedicated to none other than Shiva, the destroyer. Fascinating that Shiva, the destroyer statue stands at CERN. Fascinating that um, your blocks of the puzzle blocks, in your words, which let's face it, stand on top of the Andes, looked as if they'd been hit by a giant tidal wave. How did that happen?
Mm.
Um, um, CERN, CERN, and portals. You not. I don't think it was Friday night. It was the Friday before. Maybe it was Friday night.
Yeah.
My brain is turning to mush, almost like molten stone. Um, you talked about no, it wasn't Friday. You talked about the idea of a general strike, and you talked about the
Yeah.
Roman plebiscite.
Yeah.
One of the fascinating things I found when I was in Mexico was that the Mayans did something very similar. You see, the Mayan culture, there was an elite that ruled, everyone else served, until it came to a point where those who were serving said, "What the fuck are we doing this for?" And they simply walked out of the cities and left the elites to get on with it. And the elites died off because they didn't know how to do anything. The Mayans are still around. They live in their own villages. We, as a species, seem to have a built-in generational ability to forget technologies, to forget techniques. Now, you also talked about, and this is where I got confused, the one Friday before about when you were talking about the mystery cults, about the ancient lands of Lemuria and Atlantis, and how these Atlantean survivors formed the civilizations of not just ancient Egypt, but of the ancient Maya, of the ancient Chinese et al. And their knowledge survived through mystery cults. And so they transmitted knowledge through steganography, we could call it, where they hid things in plain sight, perhaps in books like The Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump. But the one thing we know is they want a great reset. And it's a reset, not just a financial reset, not just a wiping out of debt, not just a reset of political system, but a reset of the entire planet. To what? To a golden age when gods walked with men. And of course, our marvelous Baron Trump loves gold above all things. Everything must be golden in the age of Trump. What if? What if Elon Musk and Sam Altman, when they're talking about an AI god that can grant wishes, they're talking about a return to a golden age where indeed man and God exist together on this planet. And not all men, because we're rapidly coming to the point where, let's face it, we are the carbon that they need to reduce. Which is perhaps why they want to engineer ever more virulent pandemics, viruses. Alex, maybe that's why they're pushing for this third world war. Maybe that's why they want the global famine. That's again something in Baron Trump's book. Maybe, as I've long posited, when the Nazis found the ancient AI tech that gave them a foot up, that AI tech began to, maybe it was meant to be found. Maybe these esoteric books that led the Nazis led them to find it. And maybe that ancient AI, Alice, who the fuck is Alice, has now been guiding them into a way through CERN, through Shiva, the destroyer, Shiva, the great world turner, the cycle, to a place where they may be able to open a portal back to the ancient past, a la Star Trek, Enterprise, or Brave New Worlds, back to the Golden Age, baby, to bring those entities through. And maybe they're going to call them the aliens. Maybe they're going to call them the UAPs. Maybe they've been doing that for a while. And maybe Like tricky Nicky Dixon said, they already have technology that makes Star Trek look obsolete. Well, I don't know. Like being able to melt and shape rock or build massive pyramids that are probably power centers to shape granite, to put puzzle blocks together to withstand earthquakes. Um, yeah, no, I'm not sure how I can tie any of it together, Glenn. But
Well, I think you're doing a pretty good job. You're doing a pretty good job because you're not only fitting it into, but more like fitting it into a grand theory of everything almost. That is the thing. It's where do these individual blocks, you might say, fit into the grand scheme of things? And I I'm listening to you, and I can see this is exactly what you're doing. You're fitting this piece in to a little niche where it forms part of the greater whole. So I think you're doing a great job. So,
it's I've long contested, and you both know this, that about 20 years ago, thereabouts, when I first came across the concept of a binary system, and Planet X was really part of that binary system. It was, for me, in my mind, it was a bit like finding that piece in the jigsaw puzzle that then made sense of the rest of the puzzle.
yeah.
And ever since, I've contested that if my working hypothesis is right, and that we are part of this vast cycle that they know about, they ain't going to tell us about it. You know, we're the carbon they want to delete. They just want to keep us in place wherever we are so that we die in place. And you'll find that phrase used in their own documents, in the New World Order documents, in the Agenda 2030 documents, in the Great Reset documents. And now it comes home to roost. The air breathers of Alex. Well, I don't know if anyone's ever done what I've suggested before and take a big flashlight in the dark and shine at to see the particulates falling through our atmosphere. The I hate the term. The spray, the geoengineering spray to dim the sun. The die-off of our insect population, the die-off of our fauna and flora, and tied it to the fact that we now have a mass epidemic of cancer and Alzheimer's and myocarditis, where people that took the kill shot are ticking time bombs. It would seem to me that they are trying to kill us off at an ever increasing rate as we near that moment that they know of, that we don't, of their great reset. And just like the Ant people, maybe they're planning going underground for a season until the pole shift is over, until the sea becomes mountains and the mountains become sea again. Oh yes, something wicked this way comes. And now I'm going to throw open to the audience to give us our homework for next week. So if you want to do it in the comments now, I can't see the comments. If you want to do it in the comments now, that's great. If I'll give you until Alex's show on Tuesday, but throw in your ideas of what you'd like Alex and Glenn to look at, and I'll see if my ball of thread is long enough to connect your diverse suggestions. How about that? So, whilst you're keeping an eye for those comments coming in, Alex, what do you think? How's your mind?
I never doubted you had enough red string, to be fair. No, it's everything connects, everything links, because everything we see is different to everything they know. And when we get close, that's when they interfere, that's when they don't like it, that's when we get sound drops out, that's when they throw in a distraction on the wider scale, because everything does connect and they don't want us connecting the dots.
All this has happened before, and all this will happen again. Best tagline of any program, anytime. Any thoughts, Glenn?
Yeah, I was just reading one of the comments. Please look into the bells and why they were removed.
They weren't. That's Tartaria nonsense.
Yeah, a bit Tartarian-y that.
It's Tartaria nonsense. The bells weren't removed. Yeah, I mean, if I go out my front door to right here, I can look at an old Free Church of Scotland that still has its bell, even though it's been turned into a residential property. The bells weren't fucking removed. That's one of those trash conspiracies that are put out there to confuse.
Yeah, I mean, people often talk about the war drives for metals and things like that, and it's true. Sometimes things were melted down, like all the railings in London, and people, being asked to donate pots and pans and stuff like that, because that's part of the war effort. So I think some bells have, in the past, and some have been taken down because they're cracked or broken, like the Liberty Bell, for instance. When it was cast, it was cracked, so it's basically useless. But now it's all too much Tartary, and so sorry to disappoint, but that's not something we're going to be looking into.
No. Yeah, I mean, there is a valid thing where you can trace down where the Rockefellers and Rothschilds did change the pitch of music deliberately.
Frequency.
But that's different from the bell nonsense. So, anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Just to go kind of back to what we were saying, just in this sort of roundup piece, it does seem really odd that you can take something like the Marvelous Adventures of Baron Trump and his dog Bulger, or his Underground Adventures, and you can take them and you can transpose some of the things into if you know, you can see similarities sometimes in the way that Trump does things. Not really sure about Barron. He's a rather strange character, Barron. Apparently, he used to bang on the window of the Oval Office, trying to attract his dad's attention to come outside and play with him. So apparently, he was quite a lonely child. I don't know. I've always found he's always seemed a bit strange to me, that kid. But growing up in the Trump household, you're going to grow up strange, aren't you? You know, I don't see Trump. They're not certainly never been a normal kind of family. There's always been something strange going on. But yeah, but to take those things and fit them into a wider story, just like taking ancient stonework and fitting that into a wider context, a wider story, is basically what we're all about doing. That's what these programs are about. It's about making connections, as Alex was saying. It's about following leads and seeing where they go and seeing how one thing is connected to another in that grand overall view of things. And that's why these programs are so enjoyable. Because it always kind of leads you back to the center. All roads lead to Rome, as it were. So that's why I like doing them. Okay.
Yes, and I mean, what we've always got to be careful of is what's the scientific term? God, it's too late in a Sunday afternoon. But it's basically where you try and fit evidence into your theory.
Yeah.
So we've got to be careful not to do that, and we also, need to reiterate all the time: we are not fucking omniscient. We don't know everything. Every day is a school day for each and every one of us. But when, I guess the thing to say is this: I am actually the ultimate skeptic. I want to be proven wrong. I want to prove myself wrong. Or the other way I say it often is, I hope I'm not right. Because if I'm right, what I see coming down the road isn't very hopeful. So there you go. Any last thoughts for the audience, Alex?
That's interesting.
I don't know, really.
Can you explain what Jackie said? Jackie said, what pulled you two together?
Exactly.
Is there an answer to that?
Exactly.
I have no idea. It's just like the universe conspired to make it so, and it's always felt like home right from the beginning. It's always felt that this is, as Alex often says, this is where she's meant to be. And so I think perhaps if you believe in that kind of thing, the universe does conspire to bring people together, the right people at the right time. That's, some ways, yeah. But as far as I'm concerned, there's never been anything, none of us set out on this particular journey. Ian set out on a journey of Scottish independence and of trying to gain autonomy for his homeland. But who knew that would ever lead here? It's just the way it is. I don't know. What do you think, Ian?
No, it's yeah. I was reminded of the conversation in the chat of your show on Friday night when we were talking about the old song that we used to use, and it was about the Irish going to support the Nazis, and thingy's guys came from the other side. We're the other side, and we are the resistance. I guess that's all I can say. Everything's dying. My phone's dying. My pods are dying. Everything's dying. I'll leave it at that. So I think we should finish the show. Folks, I've loved this afternoon. It's been great because I can't see the comments, so you can't wind me up. Alex will be back on Tuesday with the Gleam of the North, God willing. I'll be here on Wednesday with your smoking briefing. I have a feeling Trump's either going to go for a massive, even nuclear bombing run on Pickaxe Mountain or attempt a disastrous ground invasion of Iran, either of which is just going to put us further into the kimchi. But we will see. Then Glenn will be back on Friday night with the Man in Black. Alex, do you have an international show tonight?
Yes, we will do. So we'll be back at 8 o'clock tonight. And
we'll do it all again next week. I think it's time for us to tell people to fuck the off. But in a nice way. Because I'm a nice guy, really. Mostly. Fuck the off. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We are the last Jacobites, proud and free, will not be bought nor bend the knee. Like Arbroath's cry and freedom's flame, we rise as one and stake our claim. Oh, side by side, through storm and fight, we stand as one in truth and right. From every shore we answer the call, Clan Jacobite, we rise or fall. It matters not our skin or land, but hearts as one and hand in hand. The blood we share is brave and bold, in woven dreams and legends old. Oh, side by side, through storm and fight, we stand as one in truth and right. From every shore we answer the call, Clan Jacobite, we rise or fall. I am you, and you are me, a thread within this tapestry. For hopes of all, for every name, we light the fire, we keep the flame. No sea can part us, nor the land. Together strong, we proudly stand. With courage, truth, and spirits high, we pledge our oath beneath the sky. Oh, side by side, through storm and fight, we stand as one in truth and right. Raise the banner.